the Transparency Act for stablecoins and the Digital Commodity Act, which have been, sitting around, floating around forever, not moving forward for whatever reason you can speculate, are now getting new focus. And we're going to have to push some regulation. In the meantime, I'm moving my assets off all unregulated exchanges, and we're putting them in Canada, where we can find a regulated exchange company called BitBuy, public, and the name of the company is Wonderfy, that trades there. So we bought shares. We own a piece of the company, and so that gives us access to the statements the company's making. In addition, it's regulated by the OSC, which is the equivalent of the SEC, the Ontario Securities Commission. There is no commingling of accounts. The assets cannot be lent out. They are scrutinized by the regulator. Proof of assets scrutinized by the really right. It is the question of the hour, but at the same time, I have a fiduciary obligation to protect these assets. I'm certainly as hell not putting them in an unregulated exchange. No chance. And I'm not putting it on an exchange that's in litigation with the SEC. No chance. I'm not putting it anywhere that doesn't have the scrutiny of a full-time regulator looking at each account on an ongoing basis. And the only place I can find that's safe right now, as you suggested, the most advanced regulator, is in Canada. That's where the assets are going. And that's where they're staying until we get this, whatever you want to call it, shitstorm worked out, because I'm not putting assets where they're not regulated.
So just to be clear, you're a Canadian, right? And these assets are currently in the United States, and you're going to be moving these assets out of the United States into Canada.
Yeah, well, let me disclose. Let me be completely transparent. I'm an Irish citizen. I'm a Canadian citizen. I'm an Emirati citizen. I also have all kinds of assets and investments in the US where I'm an investor and I pay tax. I can put these assets anywhere I want. I can choose any jurisdiction I want. I have access to the EU through my Irish passport. Obviously, I could put them in Dubai if I wish. The most advanced regulatory environment right now that I can find, the very first license ever granted worldwide, was to BitBuy. That is a broker-dealer attached to a crypto exchange in Canada. In my opinion, that is where they're going.
Why not just put them in cold storage? I mean, I'm assuming that a lot of your assets are not working for you. You don't need to be accessing the assets daily. Why not just put them into a cold storage custodian, etc.?
It's a great question. Here's why. When you're working in an environment like mine, where you mark to market all your assets every 12 hours, including all the stocks, all the bonds, all the private equity positions, all the venture positions, all the crypto positions, every 12 hours, we need to mark to market that so that our financial services director can see them, make sure that we're not leveraged, for example. Then we have to report that to the auditor. Then we have to report that to the regulator of whatever jurisdiction they're in. Cold storage is not useful for that. You don't have the liquidity that you need. So, for example, if I'm running a mandate, and here's a good example. Let's say I'm running a mandate that only allows up to 5% in Bitcoin, 5% in Ethereum, 5% in Solana, whatever. And all of a sudden the prices move in that 12 hours and I'm offside. I need to bring it down to be on side, so that I'm staying in that diversified mandate. It's very hard to do that with cold storage, very hard. Stablecoin be regulated by the Fed that oversees currency, or should it be regulated by the SEC? Or should it be regulated by the agency that does payment systems? While they fight, there's no regulation and we can't advance. I feel terrible for all the retail investors that got wiped out here, but this whole industry can't advance as it should without regulation, because we can't attract sovereign wealth and pension to it. They refuse to invest because they have no platform to do it on a compliant basis. And they're certainly not going to invest on an unregulated, rogue platform. I don't pick any one of them. These unregulated platforms are never going to get institutional capital after what's happened here, ever. Not now, not ever. So the whole point is we need this regulation. In addition, crypto's not going away. It's too productive. It's too useful. It provides a lot of services with transparency and lower cost than the existing systems do today. And I'm talking about, whether you want ACH or a SWIFT transfer or a Fed wire, these things are really old and inefficient and very expensive. Just on payment systems alone, I'd like to use a stable coin for my businesses, and I intend to do that as soon as the regulations pass. Now, along with others, I'm not the only one. I'm going to be spending a lot more time in Washington, really firing up my voice on getting this regulation through. I'm not the only person that's going to be doing this.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I think it's going to burn. This story will burn out in 48 hours, and I'll tell you why. Gensler's agenda and his calendar is public. Sam Bankman-Fried made multiple attempts in Washington to get regulation, particularly on options trading and derivative trading around crypto. And he met with everybody. He was one of the loudest voices towards getting regulation because he wanted to be able to do it in the US and have the same feature set that the international platform had in the US, which it didn't have. So if you in order to use all the features of the FTX platform, you couldn't do it in the US. You had to register it in another country. And so he was very, very active doing that. So look, obviously politics being what it is, they're going to try and make a big story out of this. But at the end of the day, I don't think this one has any teeth, because you can find him meeting with both sides of the aisle, as many people did, going to Washington, trying to advance one of these digital bills, like the Digital Commodities Act or the Transparent Stablecoin Act. He was, and his team were very, very active there. They were in Washington all the time. So look, it's obviously he gave more to the Democrats because his family is Democratic. And I got to tell you something on a more personal level, which, you know, obviously people don't want to hear right now, but I spoke to many other institutional investors who had assets on the platform because we are audited in many cases by the same firms. The auditing firms were talking to each other. The lawyers were talking to each other. We have to market in our operating company every 12 hours, as I said earlier. So we mark to market on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. 0 on our investment in FTX International, 0 on our investment FTX USA, 0 on all assets which had disappeared from our accounts. So that was a tough day. That's a hit. But we have many investments. We have compliance that forces the discipline of diversification, both on positions and on institutions. We don't own all our crypto on FTX. We don't do that because that's not compliant for us in our rules on how we operate our business. So my biggest concern now, and I talked to the auditors about this, and we talked about this earlier, is where can I put them? And for now, it's Canada. It's BitBuy, account there. And now we are monitoring that account with the regulator beside us every day. It's the only country I can find that has such an advanced regulation. The OSC order is in my view, it's a personal opinion, the very best regulator in the world for crypto assets. And the oldest dealer broker there, or broker dealer there, is BitBuy. They've been regulated longer than anybody else. That's where I'm putting my dollars and my crypto.
Yeah. How are you feeling on a personal note? Here's a guy that you spoke to. Here's a guy that, as you said, came across as the nicest guy. Kev, he was building a Ponzi. He was, and
well,
after
let's wait for the facts, but let me just disclose for you, because you're an advocate for transparency. You're an advocate for but let me finish this. You're an advocate for transparency. You have many followers. You dig deep. I like your style. I like what you do, which is why I'm happy to come on and talk with you. But let me walk you through last Thursday so that your viewers, you and I, both understand this. Thursday morning last week, when it was becoming clear that there was a 6-day, that woke up a lot of sovereign wealth and agents for sovereign wealth funds, because $8 billion is a rounding error in a sovereign wealth fund. And often times in financial services, when there's collapse and blood in the streets, are some of the best investment opportunities. So I put a message into FTX because you are right. I was a paid spokesperson for them and an investor, and I knew the management. And a few minutes later, Sam called me back at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And the only reason I put that call in was to confirm, which number is it you're looking for? Is it 6 billion or 8 billion? He confirmed to me in a very rational conversation. It was short, but rational. The number was 8 billion. I got back on the phone with all of the institutions that I work for in the indexing